Hello, I'm Anthony. Welcome back to the Arturia SEM-V tutorial series. I'm going to look at a couple of sections today, the envelopes and LFOs. Neither of them particularly warrant an episode all in their own right, so we'll bundle them both into one. If you're enjoying this series and you want to help support my channel, check out the Patreon and YouTube member links below. Fantastic way to do that. Okay, envelopes. This is a beginning, a middle and an end. Envelopes are typically, and very much in this synthesizer's case, one-shot deals. The most common use of envelopes is with the generation of the tone itself. We have a slope during which the note gets louder, and then something happens to that note. Either it holds at a constant volume or it dips down. And then we hit this point where we're holding the note down but nothing new happens. That's the sustain level. And then when you let the note go, it fades away to nothing. That's called an attack, decay, sustain, release envelope. Now you'll see on these envelopes, you only see three of those words. That's because the decay knob pulls double duty. It's also the release knob. Now envelope 1 is the envelope that determines the amplitude or volume of the sound. Envelope 2's got nothing to do with this. So let's just deal with envelope 1 for now. Again, we're back at our init voice 1 sawtooth wave, completely straightforward out of the box. That note appears immediately, holds absolutely stable for as long as I hold the key down, and then disappears immediately once I let the key go. That's because all of these controls, attack and decay, are both set to nothing. Take 0 time to get there, 0 time to disappear. And the sustain level is at maximum, which means while I've got the key held down, the amplitude is going to be as loud as the synth can generate. Let's mess with some of those controls. We'll set the attack to 1 second, and now you'll hear the note fade in. Takes 1 second to get to maximum amplitude, and then as soon as I let the key go, disappears immediately. Now, if I do the same with decay, as things stand at the moment, you're not going to hear the decay phase, because once a note's gone through the attack phase, it's at maximum amplitude. What happens from there down to the sustain level is the decay phase, but because the sustain level is set to maximum, the decay basically has nothing to do. It has nowhere to decay to. It's going to hold at maximum volume. What you will hear though is the sound fade away over the course of a second once I let the key go. Here we go, 3, 2, 1. Now I'll play a note an octave higher this time so that you can see it on the lower keyboard. Here we go. Now let's set the sustain level to something other than maximum. Now the volume is going to hit that attack point temporarily, basically not spend any amount of time at maximum volume, spend a second getting down to the sustain level, which is now going to be quite quiet, and hold at that new quiet level until I let the key go. And there we are at the sustain level, and there's me letting the key go. So it is an ADSR envelope, it's just that D and R are controlled by the same knob. Now envelope 1 is capable of simultaneously modulating VCO1. Can you see that VCO1 is hardwired to envelope 1, VCO2 to envelope 2? So this is the only other thing that envelope 1 can do. It can perform modulation on either the frequency or the pulse width. Well, we've seen this knob already, so a single demonstration should suffice. If I bring it down into frequency modulation mode, everything that I just described for the ADSR envelope for amplitude is now going to happen to pitch as well. Oops, demo fail. I need to engage envelope 1. Here we go. So at the same time as that thing got louder and then quieter and then held and then faded away, the pitch went up and then down and then held and then dropped again. Turn VCO1 off, turn VCO2 on, and now envelope 2 is capable of modulating VCO2. So in this case, let's make it a pulse wave. Let's have it modulate the pulse width. And we need to dial in some attack and some decay. And we'll have a different sustain level as well. So bear in mind, I'm actually going to set envelope 1 is still controlling the amplitude. So I'm actually going to have it maximum volume all the time, and we'll just worry about envelope 2. So the pulse width over the attack phase was modulated so heavily that it basically shrunk down to the point where the sound was almost inaudible. Then the decay phase comes in and brings it back into some kind of common sense, to have a slightly less dramatic pulse width. So the pulse width narrows, then widens, then holds until I let go. Notice that we don't hear the release cycle of envelope 2 either, because envelope 1 is in control of the volume of the sound and it has no release cycle. Let's bring 1 back in. And now when I let it go, it's going to fade out at the same time as the pulse width increases. Okay, I've just reconfigured the synthesizer so that I can demonstrate envelope 2 being used as a VCF modulator. What we've basically got here is VCO1 is taking care of the tone, it's generating the sound, and as you can see, it's a very simple wave, no modulation, it's just generating a sawtooth. But envelope 2, which has a fully fledged ADSR envelope, is now going to modulate the frequency of the VCF. See that the tone control, the frequency control itself is set very low, just 120 Hz, but modulation is almost at maximum. So as I press the key, you're going to hear a filter sweep on the sound, introduce all of the high frequencies, and then over the decay phase it'll fade away again. Watch all of this in the oscilloscope. So that's the attack phase as it gets sharper. Here's the decay phase as it gets duller, and then it holds at that sustain level until I let the key go. And again, we have a release phase and the sound fades away to nothing. So slightly unusual configuration with the envelopes, where envelope 1 is doing amplitude and modulation of VCO1. Envelope 2 is doing modulation of VCO2 and VCF control. Throw all of that away, get back to our basic sound. Now, we've seen LFOs in both of the previous episodes, but now we'll deal with them specifically. LFO 1 first, and I'll try not to repeat too much of what we've spoken about, but just as a brief reprise, let's get down to just over 1.5 Hz. Dial in some frequency modulation. You can hear the pitch of VCO1 varying at that rate. If I engage sync, it's now going to modulate at the rate of the host DAW, which is 110 BPM in this case. And now you can see I can modulate in fractions thereof. We will come back to LFO 1 shortly. We're done with it for now, but I want to talk about LFO 2 next. So I'm going to send VCO 1 into LFO 2 mode. Firstly, show you that it has the capacity to be almost identical. It also has a sync button. There's a couple of extra features that make it a little bit richer than LFO 1. Firstly, we can change the shape. So if I turn it into a sawtooth, you're going to hear the pitch go up and then fall off a cliff, go up and then fall off a cliff. Slow it down a bit. And with retrig currently off, this specifies what happens when I press a key. So at the moment, the LFO is basically cycling in the background. If I make it very slow and press some notes, you can hear it doesn't matter when I press the key, the LFO is doing its thing in the background, and when I jump on, I'm basically jumping onto this moving escalator. So if I press the key multiple times very quickly, you can kind of join the dots to redraw what the shape of the LFO is. You can hear it going up in pitch, and there it just dropped, and up it goes again. If I turn retrig on, it means every time I press a key, the LFO will be reset. So it'll always start from the lowest point of the pitch curve in the sawtooth case and then go up. Make it a little bit faster so it's easy to hear what's going on. They always sound exactly the same. The fade-in knob gives us a period of time over which we start with no modulation at all, no LFO, and then it immediately starts bringing it in over a period of time specified by this knob to the point where it's at maximum depth. So if I set this to 1 second, when I press the key, there's no LFO, and then you'll hear it gradually come in. And and there it is, it's operating now. Now this is quite a nice effect to achieve tremolo and vibrato effects. At the moment, because we've got pitch modulation, this is going to generate a vibrato, so you'll hear the note initially be flat, and then the modulation will be introduced just like a human being if they were playing a musical instrument. Obviously that's quite an intense modulation. If I make it a little bit more sensible. LFOs in square wave mode are basically on-offs, and you end up with like siren effects. The final thing to talk about with the LFOs is their polyphony. LFO 1 is polyphonic. It's a part of the synthesizer expander module, and so every oscillator, every note, every voice has its own LFO. LFO 2 is external to the synthesizer expander module and is therefore monophonic. It's quite easy to demonstrate this in Insight. I'm going to switch back to LFO, and I'm going to get myself to a situation where I've got a relatively straightforward sound. So I've zoomed in on the lower frequencies in Insight so that we can see what's going on at the lower end of the frequency spectrum. Now I'm going to press a chord. So there's one note, there's two notes, and there's three notes. Let's make it a little bit quieter. Watch the three peaks of the fundamentals as they dance. Here they are. All of those three notes are being modulated independently. If I now switch to LFO 2 mode and operate an LFO at the same rate, all three peaks are going backwards and forwards simultaneously. So the LFO is monophonic. It's still a polyphonic keyboard. It's still playing three notes. It's playing the full chord, but they're all being modulated together. Okay, that'll do us for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Hit the like button if you did. I'll see you for the next one. Thanks a lot.